Hello everyone, and welcome back to Queen Elizabeth, A Day in Her Life. In our last episode, we saw the Queen Mother doing her engagements as usual, and during this time she got together with Nelson Mandela and the Dali Lama at different times. And she saw the end of Britannia, a ship that had been used for around 40 years. The Queen and many members of the family attended the decommissioning of Britannia at Portsmouth. Queen Elizabeth did not go. She did that with things she couldn't face. Everyone that knew her knew better than to bring the subject up again. So let's see what's going on today. The year of 1998 started out badly for the Queen Mother. While she was visiting the horses in the stable at Sandringham on January 25th, Queen Elizabeth fell and broke her left hip. She was taken by ambulance first to the hospital in King's Lynn for examination, and then to King Edward VII's Hospital in London. She was in great pain, and the ride wasn't very comfortable for her. Ian Campbell, the doctor from Sandringham, who accompanied her, was astonished when she said to him in the ambulance, "You'll miss supper, won't you?" At the hospital, she immediately ordered sandwiches for him and the nurse who had traveled with them. And that evening, Roger Vickers, with Dr. Robert Linton as anesthesiast, operated on her, replacing her broken hip. And she returned to Clarence House on February 17th to convalesce. She canceled just 7 official engagements as a result of the accident and operation. Although she had 46 official engagements in 1998, she made a brief appearance at the lawn meet of the Eton Beagles at the Royal Lodge on March the 3rd, but she canceled her musical weekend that year, and she was disappointed to forego her annual visit to the Irish Guards in Munster, Germany, to present them with the shamrock. Her first public engagement was to attend the annual general meeting of Queen Mary's Clothing Guild in St. James's Palace on March 25th. After Easter at Windsor, she flew to Scotland to spend 2 weeks at Birk Hall. Ted Hughes, who by now was seriously ill with cancer, came again with his experience of what he had called, after his last visit, the healing warmth of your kindness to me. It was to be their final encounter. The fishing wasn't that great in the spring, but Hughes was pleased, gave them more time to lounge and loll and gaze and meditate. He particularly enjoyed an afternoon when, after lunch at Pulver, they just sat and listened to the river. He brought the Queen Mother a copy of his new book, Birthday Letters, a series of poems about his life with Sylvia Plath. When the Queen Mother asked him why he had published them, he replied that he thought it was important for him as a kind of purging. He had done it both for his children and for himself. He said that after he published the book and ignored what the critics had said about it, he felt unburdened. It was quite changed my life and my whole outlook for the better. He thought that Queen Elizabeth had changed his life too. When I remember your gesture and your words, "We must be strong," I feel it like a huge smile of joy, like a surge from a tremendous battery going through me as well, and I remember it constantly. He needed all that strength to resist his illness. On October the 16th, he and Carol went to Buckingham Palace, where the Queen bestowed upon him the Order of Merit. A few days later, on October 28, 1998, Ted Hughes died. Queen Elizabeth sent a wreath of yellow, white, and cream flowers. They accompanied his coffin, and Carol Hughes then cast them upon the waters of his favorite river, the Torridge in Devon. The following May, Queen Elizabeth attended Hughes's memorial service in Westminster Abbey. She walked up the long aisle on the arm of Prince Charles. At the end, the congregation heard Hughes's rich Yorkshire voice reading the song from Shakespeare's Cymbeline. As it echoed around the ancient church, many were moved to tears. "Fear no more the heat of the sun, nor the furious winter's rages. Thou thy worldly work hast done, home art gone, and taken thy wages. Golden lads and girls all must, as chimney sweepers, come to dust." Until the end of Queen Elizabeth's life, Ted Hughes remained always on the pantheon of people to whom she raised high her glass at dinner. The year 2000 was celebrated all throughout the world for the millennium and in Britain of the 100th birthday of Queen Elizabeth. The year began with an event by the new Labour government, the opening of the Dome, a purpose-built stage on the Thames of Greenwich. It was intended to be a symbol of a new Britain, and so it turned out to be, if not quite the way its creators intended. By the year 2000, Britain was more prosperous than any time in her history. People had wider opportunities for individual happiness than ever before. Women had greater power and freedom. Society was more fluid and more tolerant. There was more diversity in London. It was a cosmopolitan city. Wealth was spread more equally between classes. There was better housing and much better food. Educational opportunities had wider, but if education was broader, it was sometimes shallower. More and more children were emerging from school without basic skills. Drugs posed a serious threat to the lives of young people. There was less respect for public service, tradition, and authority than 50 years before. The concept of duty, central to Queen Elizabeth, seemed quite outdated to many of the young. Habits and beliefs that had held British society together had disappeared. Immigration had changed the face of many cities. Islam was now the fastest-growing religion in Britain. By contrast, Christian congregations were constantly diminishing. The Prime Minister, Tony Blair, himself a Christian, said, "We enjoy 1,000 material advantages over any previous generation, and yet we suffer a depth of insecurity and spiritual doubt they never knew." British towns and much of the countryside had completely changed. Motorways had been cut harshly through beautiful areas. The hearts of many towns had been ruined by insensitive developers, architects, and planners. Suburbanization had destroyed local communities. Towns became clone suburbs, and the quirky or the original features of different places were often razzed in the name of profits and efficiency. The English landscapes were sold to make holiday homes. The landscapes and the townscapes were vanishing. The English landscapes were also losing character. Orchards were cut down. Small family farms were sold to make holiday homes, and the landscapes and the townscapes were vanishing. The Dome celebration, compared with the festival of 50 years previously, was different. The festival displayed a poor but self-confident Britain rejoicing in her singular accomplishments. The Dome represented a richer but far less self-assured nation. On the Dome's opening night, December 31st, 1999, the organizers paid lip service to the Christian origins of the millennium. The Archbishop of Canterbury, Dr. George Carey, was allowed to read prayers just before midnight. The bishop tried to remind people that Christ had been born 2,000 years before, but he was surrounded by drunks and by impatient officials who wished to begin the real secular celebrations. These included an appearance by the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh, who were required to join hands for the Prime Minister and his wife to sing Auld Lang Syne. Queen Elizabeth had a quieter evening. She dined at Sandringham with Princess Margaret and her racing manager, Sir Michael Oswald, and his wife, Lady Angela. The celebration of another birthday later in the year provided a remarkable contrast with those of the Dome. One member of the household said that Queen Elizabeth was in her running down years, but running down didn't mean giving up. In 1999, she had undertaken 38 public engagements. Only one was canceled because she had a chill. She still entertained generously with her lunches, her weekend parties, and more intimate invitations to tea. In early 1999, she and Princess Margaret invited the director of the Royal Collection, Hugh Roberts, and his wife Jane, then curator of the print room, to look through a trunk of Strathmore papers that had turned up. When he entered the room to have tea there was a table laid in the center of the room, a tea table in front of the fireplace. The Queen and Princess Margaret had just returned from Ascot, where the Queen had a winner. There were delicious tiny sandwiches, toasted hot cross buns, and little cakes to eat, and 2 teapots. Queen Elizabeth asked her guests, "Would you like Margaret's special tea or my ordinary?" The princess's tea was served in a pretty yellow teapot, and Queen Elizabeth's was still in the basic brown pot she had been given by the train steward on her way to Warwick races. When the princess and the Robertses delved in the trunk Queen Elizabeth studied the photographs with a magnifying glass. She was able to identify and provide a running commentary on almost everything and everyone. She thought that some of the portrait studies of her as a young woman were too serious or yearning. After an hour of sorting, she offered them all a drink. Princess Margaret mixed a stiff martini for her mother, and the rest of them had whiskey. One of her staff then came in to announce that Queen Elizabeth was on the phone. "Who?" asked Queen Elizabeth. "Oh, you mean the Queen." The curator and the director took their leave, their car laden with plastic bags filled with photographs, which were then incorporated in the Royal Photographic Collection at Windsor, while others were sent to Glamis by Queen Elizabeth. That year, Queen Elizabeth looked forward to the annual lunch with Charles and Kitty Farrell in May, even more than usual, because it was her friend's 50th wedding anniversary. "How blissful and wonderful," she wrote. "I expect the hedge will be many feet higher." After the lunch party, she told Lady Kitty what joy she had seeing all those delightful people chatting and boozing outside the Salle de Glace. Almost every day, she and the Queen had their telephone conversations and discussed breeding, the naming, the successes and failures of their horses and their jockeys. Her racing reputation still stretched across the world. There were happy family events that year, including the wedding of her grandson Prince Edward to Sophie Rhys-Jones and the christening in the Royal Chapel at Royal Lodge of her great-grandson Arthur, second son of Lady Sarah Chatto. When there were family sorrows too, in November, Queen Elizabeth gave a lunch party at Clarence House after the memorial service for Lord Dalhousie, her Lord Chamberlain, and towards the end of the meal, her niece Jean Wills had a heart attack. The Queen Mother quietly led her guests from the room. Mrs. Wills was given immediate medical attention, but she died several days later in the hospital. It was a great shock. It was only made easier by the Queen Mother's belief in the afterlife. There were celebrations for Queen Elizabeth being 100 through the spring and the summer, and she enjoyed all of them. On June 27th, she was given a luncheon at Guildhall. Her neighbor, the Archbishop of Canterbury, absent-mindedly picked up her wine glass instead of his own, and the Queen Mother quickly said, "Hey, that's mine." On June 21st, the Queen gave a reception and dance at Windsor Castle to mark the major birthdays of Queen Elizabeth, Princess Margaret 70, the Princess Royal 50, and the Duke of York 40. In the Commons, the Prime Minister Tony Blair moved a motion commending the Queen Mother on reaching her centenary year, the first time that the Commons had ever considered such a notion. He pointed out throughout her life she has enthused countless people for countless causes with her familiar smile, her sparkle, and of course her wonderful hats. Speaker after speaker paid tribute to the work she had done for the country since the abdication, her steadfastness during the war, her service to the monarchy and nation ever since. The high point of her birthday celebration was the pageant in her honor and the Horse Guards Parade. The organizer, as for her 80th and 90th birthday celebrations, was Major Michael Parker. In the mid-1990s, Parker had tea with Princess of Wales and the Queen Mother. When the princess said to her, "We're all so looking forward to your 100th birthday," Queen Elizabeth replied, "Oh, you mustn't say that. It's unlucky. I mean, I might be run over by a big red bus." Parker said he thought that this was very unlikely, to which Queen Elizabeth replied, No, it's the principle of the thing. Wouldn't it be terrible if you spent all your life doing everything you're supposed to do? Didn't drink, didn't smoke, didn't eat things, took lots of exercise, all the things you didn't want to do, and suddenly one day you were run over by a big red bus, and as the wheels were crunching into you, you'd say, "Oh my God, I could have got so drunk last night." That's the way you should live your life, as if tomorrow you'll be run over by a big red bus. At that, Parker thought, was exactly the way she did live. Moreover, she treated each day as a lovely surprise that was going to be wonderful. And that pageant for her, all the regiments and organizations wished to be included, and Parker arranged that they should march past in motley groups of people, animals, and vehicles, each supervised by 2 guardsmen. You can have anything in your group, from an Aberdeen Angus bull to a field marshal, but you are in charge, he told the guardsmen. You must get them to keep up and move at the right speed. The plan was that the national anthem would be played after Queen Elizabeth arrived in the Horse Guards parade, before she got out of her carriage to inspect the troops. Then came a message from Clarence House that Queen Elizabeth insisted on standing up in the carriage for the anthem. Parker was alarmed. He thought it would be dangerous if the horses moved. He found out that Queen Victoria had remained seated in a coach while the anthem was played, but the message came back that Queen Elizabeth is not Queen Victoria. She will stand. Eventually, he persuaded her that the national anthem should be played as she drove on the parade ground rather than after she arrived. The day began badly with IRA bomb scares in London, canceled trains, and the controlled explosion of a suspected bomb in Whitehall. The police were nervous. The officer in charge told Mike Parker that the whole event might have to be canceled. Parker replied that such a surrender was out of the question. But if he felt that way, he should go and give the news to Queen Elizabeth himself. The man was horrified, and the parade went ahead. It was a balmy evening, and she stood a great deal, chatted with Prince Charles, and enjoyed the music and the singing. Beside her stood Major General Evelyn Webb Carter, the general officer commanding London District, who told her what was passing in front of her so that she could react appropriately, and she did. The veteran actor Sir John Mills, aged 92 and totally blind, stood up before her in an open vintage Rolls-Royce and made a moving speech in her honor. Few of the thousands of people who took part realized how little of the festivities she could herself see. Afterwards, Queen Elizabeth wrote to Parker to say that she had loved the contrast between the smart soldiers and the orderly rabble which followed them. She said the parade had cheered people up all over the country. I thought it was marvelous. So I will end the video here. I had thought that we would be concluding the book Queen Mother in this episode, but there's still a little more to go, so the next episode will probably be the final video for the book. Well, I'm going to miss the time we have spent going through her life. The Queen Mother really was amazing, and I love her outlook on life, as was shown in the story for this episode, with her explaining how one should enjoy one's life, because what if you were run over by a big red bus and never got to do the things you wanted to? So that's a great way to look at life. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you haven't subscribed, if you could do so, it would help the channel to grow, as well as giving it a thumbs up. It's all a great help. And if you haven't clicked on the notification bell, if you could do that, it lets you know when a video is posted. More importantly, I want to wish everyone a good day, and tune in again soon for another episode of Queen Elizabeth, A Day in Her Life. Thank you. Bye.